This is Art Radio Transmission on demand radio from DPN, and now we've got a John Fryer radio play. This radio play I know is one of John Fryer's favourite themes, and it's certainly one of mine. It is The Conspiracy Theory from John Fryer.
We present The Conspiracy Theory by John Fryer, with Tom Hume and Nigel Peaver as Sir Richard.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Mary Collingwood, and my colleague here is Professor Martin Dysart. We are the authors of the report Population Depletion in the Latter Half of the 21st Century. It is the document that many of you are currently holding. We were tasked with writing up this report by the Allens Institute out of Boston. The report has taken almost 10 years to compile and prepare. The graphs within its pages demonstrate the projected increase and decline of human life expectancy between now and the end of the century. Controversial though our conclusions may sound to many of you in this room, we believe they are correct. We do not present our analysis here as anything other than a warning, not just to those of you gathered here today, but to all humanity.
What Mary is alluding to, as I'm sure many of you have already guessed, is that although we recently passed the 8 billion figure for human beings on planet Earth, progression beyond this to 9 or even 10 billion is by no means a guaranteed number. Aging populations throughout developed countries, limited advancement in economic terms, and the struggle for expensive housing, to say nothing of greater access to family planning and female education, have also resulted in lower birth rates, even in parts of the world where large families were often considered the norm. All of these factors have greatly curtailed the current birth rate, with many nations now well below the 2.1 children per woman required to maintain the current level of population. In the USA, for example, in 2017, the rate was 1.77. 2018, 1.73. 2019, 1.71. And in 2020, 1.64. Clearly, we expect this trend to continue. The aging populations will, as a result, be required to work for longer while receiving smaller pensions. In other words, as the older members of Western societies die off, they are unlikely to be replaced worker for worker with indigenous employees from those host countries. Humanity, therefore, has reached a numerical height from which it can only decline.
You must be Adrian Smith.
Sir Richard.
Come in, come in.
Thank you. I thought you'd have a butler.
I do. I've given him the night off.
Not on my account, surely.
It's his birthday. Even butlers are entitled to holidays.
No other staff?
Do I need them?
I don't know. Do you?
They have their own lives too. They don't have balls and chains around their feet.
The union would never go for it?
And the union might even be right. Here, let me take your coat.
Oh, thank you.
Please come on through. Filthy night.
It'll blow over.
Most things do.
I would agree.
Whatever is important today, this evening, tomorrow, will be an irrelevance by this time next week.
Did someone say that?
Yes.
Who?
Me. Just then.
No, I meant...
I know what you meant. I was just trying to make a point.
Which was...
that problems of whatever nature never last for long before they are forgotten.
But only to be replaced by something else.
Very good. I see we shall get on.
I hope so, Sir Richard.
Oh, Richard, only if you don't mind. I could never abide all that deferential behaviour. One may be born with a silver spoon between one's teeth, but our feet...
Are all made of clay?
Correct! I think, my boy, we shall get on famously.
I do hope so, Sir Richard.
Excellent. Now, what would you like to drink?
Well, as I came by train...
You may partake of the strong stuff.
Do you mean whiskey?
The only drink for men. Do you not agree?
You're the host.
Ice?
As it comes.
Neat. Good man. A toast.
To...
The truth, my dear fellow.
the truth.
Well, we can't drink to lies, now can we?
We probably shouldn't.
Indeed, we should not.
But there are plenty that will.
I have no doubt.
Right. Firstly, Sir...
Ah.
Yes, of course. Richard. Let me say on behalf of the magazine how grateful, and to be honest with you, somewhat surprised, we are that you agree to speak with us.
Oh? Why is that?
You have given very few interviews in the last 10 years, since you publicly stepped down from politics, and we thought, that's the editorial team, and myself, that our publication would be, well, a bit left-wing, to be truthful with you. We thought.
That I would turn you down?
Yes.
So, when you contacted my estate about conducting an interview, you only really did it so you could be denied?
I suppose so.
Not a very positive way to progress. If you plan to fail before you start, how can you ever succeed at anything?
Well, I would concede the point.
Many people are unsuccessful for many reasons, but hopefully they advance with each failed attempt. But to go into any enterprise expecting to fail says much about those making the approach in the first place.
I'll pass your comments on.
Something I've noticed, something that has developed over the last 50 years, a growing sense of fatalism over this country. This we can't do rather than we jolly well can.
It's not always easy, Richard. If you are at the bottom of society, a lot of rungs on the ladder to climb. The cost of housing these days.
Keeps many in their place.
It has been said.
Hasn't it, Justin? Many times over. But not by me.
You are nearer the top of the pyramid than the majority.
Then what would I know about the struggles of those at the bottom? Is that what you mean?
Some might say that.
Many, I think, would say that. Or something of that nature. But if, as you say, one is somewhat removed from the everyday problems that beset the majority of the population, then what concern would it be for those of us with whiskey and cigars at the end of the day as to the fate of those very souls in the mire?
I'm very aware, Richard, that you personally give away 5% of your annual wealth every year to deserving charities.
I also get good tax breaks, which also go to those charitable donations, and getting one or two editors of mainstream publications on side, or at the very least into the right gentlemen's clubs, have chosen not to bring it to the public's attention.
I don't think it's all about self-interest.
Oh? Don't you?
Orphanages, shelters for the homeless, recovering drug addicts. I could go on. You seem to do more than most.
Oh, you are kind, Adrian. Let me top up your glass.
That's more than enough. Thank you.
Keep the cold out.
We were just surprised, that's all.
And so, before we start, you want to know why?
Yes.
Your circulation is down.
Most print journalism is at the moment.
If I can raise it, even a small amount, would that not assist you? Maybe even help keep the magazine afloat for a little while longer? Would that not be to the advantage of the editor and publisher?
You know that Michael Jones combines both roles.
Shows he is committed to its success. First in, last out, he works hard. Why would I not be prepared to help him and your magazine?
We're Very small.
So was I when I was born, but I grew up into the colossus you see before you.
We're still grateful.
No need, it's my pleasure. Would you like something to eat?
I'm fine. You cook your own meals?
I'm an expert with a tin opener.
You are not what I was expecting.
Oh, and what was it?
Well,
Shall I answer my own question?
many do these days.
And enjoy the sound of their own voice in the process?
True.
An upper-class idiot separated from the rest of the population by money, title, and privilege. The type of man that has no real understanding of the difficulties faced by the average man or woman in this world. Perhaps even the kind of individual who lives in a bubble with little knowledge or even interest of anyone outside his social set. How am I doing so far?
Not that far off.
A man whose international business interests mean that when he travels, and I do quite a bit, it requires him to ignore the poor and the destitute that I look down upon from a great height. People that I would see as little more than useless eaters, or maybe mindless consumers, just suitable to sell things to in an ever-growing commercial market.
It has been said.
And frequently, if one takes the time to scan the internet, one may even read it.
And do you?
Oh, I'm as vain as the next person, why wouldn't I?
There are those, of course,
Yes?
that say equally less flattering things about you.
Ah, would this be about my secret plans to take over the world?
They're on to you.
Now let me try to get this right. I, it is reported, am behind every major disaster that has happened in the last 40 years.
If I remember, you didn't set up your charitable work until you were 35, after your father's death. He was not as benevolent as your good self.
Oh, he had his moments, but he was a man very much committed to the progression of his family.
Couldn't we all say that?
And I would not believe anyone that claimed otherwise. And by the way, neither should you.
I wouldn't.
Good. But you are correct. I have been attributed to be one of the real rulers of this planet.
Are you a reptile?
I have been accused of speaking with a forked tongue once or twice.
And can you change your appearance?
I once went to a football match wearing a blue scarf, discovered where I was standing, and bought a red one.
It's a pretty big yes. Who won?
The blue team.
Bad luck.
Yes. I was never any good at sport.
Better at politics, so I heard.
I've had the ear of the odd politician.
Did it count for much?
Anyone can go and see their MP. For free. Just make an appointment.
What did you talk to them about?
Ah. Extra barriers outside the local library.
Did it work?
Yes,
It's on record that you are a great believer in this country,
I am. And its institutions and its people.
even if they don't agree with you?
The democratic system is a system, not a dictatorship. Sometimes people agree with you, sometimes they don't. Simple as that.
There are those that think
That I do not take failure lightly,
it's what I've heard.
and will no doubt hear it again. But if I was to call my lawyer every time someone said something that I didn't like,
The lawyers would make a lot of money.
I've already paid for more than a few house extensions.
And now, I'm guessing, you've got bigger fish?
To batter?
That's what I was thinking.
I heard you were smart. Too smart to be working for your current employer. The Searcher magazine? Bit small for you. I'd have thought, judging from your track record.
We all make mistakes.
You were lied to. Pictures presented as fact, which turned out not to be the case.
And I fell on my sword.
Honourable. Traditionally, journalists go to prison to protect a source of one kind or another, but in your case, you were set up, told to believe a source, did so, and the source was fake.
I believe there were a couple of spelling errors in my copy as well.
Not your fault. The Daily National was ready for a fall. Too many security leaks that upset one or two members of the higher orders. It was the rumor I heard.
You'd be the man to know.
Yes, I would. The National had been following a story about British money, Afghan drug lords, and Russian property here in good old Blighty. You must have thought that at some point there would be a retaliatory strike.
Robert Jones, the editor, thought he was clever enough to spot anything coming.
Yes, I always liked Robert. Good after-dinner speaker, if you ever get the chance then.
Not invited to those kind of parties.
I'll see what I can do in the future.
Thank you. I doubt very much I'd feel at home.
Oh, nonsense, nonsense. You'd fit right in. And we don't hold grudges.
Grudges?
You write harsh words about people. Some of them will remember.
Sir Richard.
Ah?
We are meant to be making a start.
Oh, yes. Your profile about me and my family.
Thank you. Yes. Now, I'm going to record this, if you don't mind, for my own memory later.
I'm sure your memory is excellent, Adrian. You won't need a digital record for what we are going to talk about this evening.
This is a profile piece.
No, it isn't.
Didn't Jane in the office explain the reason for our inquiry to you?
Statesman of Britain, I think she said.
That's it.
Young man, if you want to know the history of my family and my career, do an internet search. You'll find me easy enough.
Then
Why? Why did I agree to meet you?
seems a reasonable question from our standpoint.
Take a seat, Adrian.
Thank you.
There are those, as we discussed, that accuse one of all things.
Ruling the universe, for example?
Let us start with the world. That'll be a challenge enough. The universe will have to wait for another time. But as I said, stock markets, global warming, epidemics, floods, assassinations, coup d'etat, and so on.
It has been asserted that you do move in some very shady circles.
And I do. But that doesn't mean that I actually do any shady deeds.
Unless one reads the internet.
In which case, what does it matter?
The internet carries no authority. Is that what you mean?
So a story on the net may be 100% true. It will, however, be lost in the scale of the World Wide Web or forgotten by the next craze to go viral.
So, if I follow you correctly, the influence of the biggest information service the world has ever known is zero.
Oh, not quite zero. But unless the mainstream press decide to bring it to the front page or the hourly headlines, who in any numbers is going to know or even care?
I think there is still a place for the written word.
And so do I. Which is why I did everything in my power to bring you here.
As I said, the magazine...
No. To bring you here.
You mean...
You.
me?
Why not? Do you think anyone should be made to stand in the corner just because they once made a mistake? My dear boy, if that were the case, few of us would ever survive a week in any job. You were lied to. Your previous employer was lied to. You took the public fall, but it wasn't your fault. I believe you deserve a second chance, as do we all.
Very community-spirited.
Not at all. Just doing my bit.
Then, if I'm not to do a profile piece on you, then what is it you wish me to do?
We'll come to that in a little while.
Why not now?
Because we have a great deal of ground to cover, and not much time in which to cover it.
I'm not sure I'm following you, Richard.
I doubt, as a man of the printed word, that it will come as any surprise to you to learn that the political systems of all the free democratic countries have long since been corrupted. I would say beyond repair. This is hardly a revelation to you, I'm sure. After all, the bookshelves are full of alternative concepts and ideas.
Are we back to reptiles again?
And their plan for global domination, yes, something like that.
I'm not necessarily against it. I just wish they'd get on with it.
Don't we all? But they never seem to, do they?
I'm sorry. I don't follow you.
Or how about the end of the world? A blazing rock falling out of the sky. Nuclear attack by, well, take your choice. The Russians? The North Koreans? The French? The rising waters due to the melting of the ice caps? How about the aliens? Finally making contact and saving us from our very selves, well?
I think they're all called conspiracy theories.
And yet we are all still here, aren't we?
You never know. The reptiles might just be biding their time.
The world continues to get up, go to work, and make it home at the end of the day.
Which is all a bit boring. Is that your point? People look for excitement, and most conspiracy ideas are just subjects for the dinner table.
Or even the odd documentary.
But no real harm done.
If you like.
You're drawing me in, bit by bit.
Good. One of the problems usually exploited to such effect by those that rule this planet.
I thought you ran this planet.
You're very kind. No. What I meant to explain was that while the majority still think that there is a group, or a team, some sort of cabal with operatives around the globe, ready to fulfill some sort of ruling agenda, those that are governed will almost always accept the idea that they are unable to challenge those in power, therefore are unable to improve not only their own lives, but those of their families.
And there isn't. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
So if those with power...
Of which there is no such thing.
Sorry, what about money and influence? Don't they count?
No.
Why?
Can you eat money?
Fair point.
As for influence, if you make your case and others refuse to listen to you, you have none. If others try to influence you and you refuse to listen to them, they have none. Either way, influence only happens when the listener agrees with the speaker. Otherwise, it's just noise in the room.
And if the speaker is correct, but ignored?
Then he had no influence, regardless of how much money he had in his pocket. Do you not agree?
I'm listening.
Power is perception, all it has ever been.
I'm sure there are those that would argue with that.
I have no doubt that there are. But it is true, I assure you. You look confused.
How can a man with all the trappings of money, power, and yes, influence, claim there is no such thing?
Because if you ever asked someone to empty a bin for you, and they have refused, you then have to do it yourself. How much you might be paying them will be an irrelevance.
You mean you'll have to exert a different kind of influence?
Very perceptive.
Are you trying to suggest that your influence upon the world then is not overt, but more in line with covert action?
Ooh, you make it sound so very underhand. I'm not a member of the intelligence service.
I never meant to imply that you were, but I recognize the mode of operation.
And you would be right. Any attempt to force the wider community into action not perceived as being in their best interests would always be difficult to achieve. But if the general public came to believe that a certain course of action was in their interests, then I and others would be justified in providing that service.
Which, some might say, was the very thing you wanted to achieve in the first place.
They might be correct.
Perhaps you could give me an example.
All right. You might remember back in 2008, we got ourselves into a spot of bother over our support for a West African dictator called President Abagana of the tiny country of Utsino. A nation so small that few even now could actually point to it on a map. Little more than a few lines and a dot to indicate the capital of Port Andrew, named after some explorer or other. Eugene Arthur Andrew, who created a port there for the shipping of wild animals back to Europe, and in a moment of generosity, and no doubt arrogance, gave it his name. President Thabo Abagana, facing a little local difficulty of his own, then enacted an old, distant treaty with the motherland, us, to be precise, which, as you know, means...
Military assistance. It was covered in the papers at the time.
Yes. You even wrote the odd piece, as I recall.
You read my articles?
However, President Abagana did not have what you would call a good record with regards to human rights.
No, he did not.
Intimidation, harassment, murder. Nothing was beyond the president, who had isolated himself behind a wall of bureaucrats, sycophants, and self-servers. Needless to say, our public support of this president was not universally popular.
I covered the protests in central London.
Oh, they were elsewhere, I assure you.
Manchester, Brighton.
Yes, there were a few.
Cost the government of the day its lead in the polls.
Some might even say its grip on power.
You can't always choose your friends.
Correct again. The problem, of course, which on the surface was bad PR, but below the surface was something else.
I'm still here.
Due to budget difficulties, let's say that the RAF at the time was a bit short on the subject of long-range strategic bombers, and those we did have were undergoing maintenance.
Meaning?
We outsourced the operation.
To our friends across the pond.
Strangely, no.
Then...
Ever heard of Global Defense Services, GDF for short?
The odd rumour.
I'm not surprised. We don't generally advertise the fact that we have used them.
Oh.
They just happen to be the world's largest private security provider.
You mean like...
No, I'm not talking about a few bouncers outside a pub in London. I'm talking of private armies, air forces, and yes, they even have their own naval fleet with its own aircraft carrier.
Mercenaries? But for governments?
The website doesn't put it quite like that.
But it is.
But it is. They brought over some long-range bombers of their own. Now, those B-52s don't just fly off the deck of their carrier. They require a more substantial runway. Luckily, we had RAF Broadhouse. Part of the deal with President Abagana was for British companies to search for oil and gas fields off the Zeno coast in their internationally recognized waters. Coincidentally, a private African operation just out of Johannesburg had discovered one of the largest untapped oil fields found in the last 50 years. That now just happens to be currently exploited by UK PLC, the very same country that had only previously started privately supporting the rebels in the north of Utsi, which was President Abagana's problem in the first place.
Did he know?
He'd be a fool if he didn't.
Then why?
Better to dance with the devil than be left sitting it out. Stay sitting down long enough and people forget who you are.
Why?
We needed the oil. Why do you think? Want to keep the lights on, don't you?
Why do you tell me all of that?
2 reasons.
Oh?
Firstly, to explain how the people that rule this planet act and think.
And second?
That not all think the same.
Why am I here?
I want you to do something for me.
And the profile for the editor?
Write whatever you want. It's not as if I'm going to read it. Be as objective as you wish.
No one sells copy by being nice.
Then don't be nice.
So, as well as writing critical things about you, what else do you want me to do?
If you ask 10 different people the same question, even if they agree on the problem presented, they will eventually give you 10 different answers.
The nature of people, the world over, I suspect.
I think you are right.
I think I am.
So, if consensus on a subject, any subject, is impossible when dealing with the general population, Do you believe that a universal purpose is possible within the world's ruling elites?
Probably not.
Again, you would be right.
And I thought you guys were meant to be the best informed.
We are. Which is why we argue amongst ourselves so much. Each meeting is full of people all convinced that they are right, and everyone else is mistaken.
Human ego. Dangerous.
That is what I think. It's what I've thought for a long time. Therefore, division within the nation-state is a valuable tool in creating separation and disarray throughout the country.
I thought the idea was to create something that held the nation together.
Oh, my dear chap, please do not pretend that you believe anything like that for 1 second. You are old enough to know a ruling group holds dominion over the majority by constantly sowing the seeds of disunity. Those at the bottom of society ever became aware of their own power, they might rise up and challenge us.
And that would never do.
It would not.
You might have to get an ordinary job, just like the rest of us.
And that would also never do.
So division leaves you at the top of the pyramid.
Which you know to be true.
You don't look to me, Richard, like a man about to go short of the good things in life anytime soon.
And with your help, I shall not be going without it in the future either.
Oh, and how do I figure in your grand plan to reshape the world?
The people that run this world, Adrian, do not work on the schedule of the next news cycle. They don't care whether people recognize them in the streets. They do not write for the daily tabloids. They work on agendas that may take decades to come to fruition. They start projects that their grandchildren may not even live to see finished. They think different from you. That is why they are where they are.
And I'm in the mire. Is that what you mean?
That's not what I said.
No, it isn't.
But it is what I meant.
But, Richard, if keeping the social order is so important to you, and those of your
class,
if you like, then why explain the secret to the likes of me?
Because to implement the changes, which are often required, it can rarely be done openly, so those helping to spread disinformation must have reasons to believe it.
You mean you don't want those lying to the public to suddenly have a moment of realization that they're being used?
Precisely.
And those in my profession lie for you regularly, do they?
Never turned to the media to explain something and thought, why didn't they ask the question?
I've heard people make that point.
How do you control an interviewee?
By controlling what is asked. You control what is said.
Correct again.
I asked you before why I was here.
And you are starting to ask the question. Whether you were sent to construct a profile of me, or if you personally were sent because of your previous record that led to the end of your career with the national daily newspaper.
Those photographs turned out to be fake, as you know.
Images of British troops committing atrocities in the Balkans. Shameful.
Which turned out to be staged.
In a forest in Wales.
I was set up.
I believe you were.
Was it by you?
Of course it was.
Why?
Because I would need you later on. And if you felt safe in that rag of a paper, you would be less receptive to what I am about to suggest.
I was a serious journalist.
No. You thought you were. People often think of themselves as being more important than they actually are. Vanity is, sadly, no respecter of income.
My reputation was destroyed. People stopped taking my calls.
Yes. And even articles written under a pseudonym were not printed. Almost as if someone was keeping an eye on you, waiting just for the moment when you would be desperately looking for another job. At which point the newly created Searcher magazine started up with a new editor and a secret partner.
You want me to be your mouthpiece?
Oh, good Lord, no. The words must be entirely your own. I will not contribute even a syllable, my name not even mentioned on a single page.
I should tell you to go to hell.
Yes, you should. But you won't. Oh, it's not that you agree with my way of working. I am sure you are appalled by my actions against you, for one very simple reason.
Which is?
For all your indignation that I am sure you are currently feeling towards me.
And you'd be right.
You will no doubt be currently asking yourself, what does he want with me?
I know what it is you want.
I'd be surprised.
You want me to be your creation. Jump to your command at any hour of the day that you decide to call.
Hardly. After all, I have the editor there.
Knock out your propaganda and lose any remaining vestiges of credibility I still have left.
And I have numerous others on my payroll to do all of those things. I don't need one more hack. I need a journalist. A journalist who will be prepared to follow a story all the way to the end and not be afraid to upset the odd official in a high place. I need someone who can keep the pressure on.
Well, I'm not sure I feel like doing anything for you.
Oh, take a broader view. I am in a position, via my combined interests, to increase your current income by quite some margin. Would that not help with the bills for your wife and that young son of yours and the young sister he'll soon have?
You researched my family.
Do you really think you'd be here if I didn't know everything about you? Before you even walked through my front door? Dear, oh dear, what a strange world you must think you have entered into. But I assure you, it is the world that was always outside, just threatening to come in. Most are never invited. Some only get the odd glimpse, but very few have the door held open for them, and then invited to cross the threshold.
No one likes being manipulated.
But we all like the idea of having manipulated others to our own will. The thought that we may be the puppet masters rather than the puppets themselves. Don't tell me you're not just a little bit interested. And of course, you've got that mortgage to pay at the end of the month.
Every man has his price, eh?
Yeah. Well, Robert Walpole knew something about that. Come on. Running the world. It's fun. Or at the very least, it will recreate your career.
How?
I want to give you a subject. More than a subject, actually. I want to give you enough information to change the way the people of this country see themselves in relation to recent events.
Sounds big.
Big doesn't come anywhere near it. You see, any story, no matter how big, in the moment will fade.
Tomorrow's chip wrappers, we used to say.
We did. Many years ago. But today the world of the media is different.
Really? In what way?
Endless stories, much of which have no impact or relationship to the reader. I want you to write a series of articles that will show the average man and woman not only that they have been manipulated from the moment of their birth, but also that they will be manipulated until their final dying breath.
And who is doing this evil? Manipulating, dividing policy that keeps the people of this country firmly underfoot.
I hear a cynical tone in your voice, young man. Am I to take it that you do not believe me?
I thought we had dismissed the blood-sucking lizard idea.
Which was only ever a euphemism for those that run this planet.
We used to call them the Blue Bloods.
Oh, I've called them many things over the years.
But you believe they control the lives of millions.
They do not stand on the street corner shouting instructions on what people can or cannot do. But if you shape national events, you don't need to get people to jump through the very hoops that you want them to.
I won't be involved in anything that leads to someone's life being destroyed.
Better to keep the world in ignorance, you mean? A harsh way of looking at things. But if you think that is better...
I didn't say that.
I know. We'd all rather keep our hands clean, wouldn't we?
What is it that you want?
All got rather serious, that.
What do you want?
Recently, the world went through a global pandemic in which millions were accounted as dying. I want you to present an alternative narrative.
I beg your pardon?
I want you to explain a different hypothesis.
How could you even suggest something like that?
Very easily. And I have just enough to prove what you would call foreknowledge in advance of the fact.
Very legal.
I did consider the bar at one point in my career. But let us not get away from the issue at hand.
Your proof of foreknowledge?
Open this envelope. Read the content.
What is it?
A letter from Dr. Peter Holton, a member of the Advanced Planning Committee, reporting to the office of the Australian Prime Minister.
Saying?
As you can see, it details the process of infection rates and policy decisions to fight the now famous restrictive heightened animated condition, or RHAC for short. Never exactly rolled off the tongue, but that was hardly the point.
The point being?
Look at the date of the letter.
10 years ago.
And the contents.
Transmission starting dates. National shutdowns. Isolation centres. Inoculation timescale. Roadblocks. Emergency address to the nation. Vaccination rollout. Legal presidencies to establish enforcement proceedings against those reluctant to accept government policy. Is this real?
You're holding it in your hand. What do you think?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. Could have been written yesterday for all I know. Where is Dr. Peter Holton? How do I get in contact with him?
You can't.
Why is that?
He's dead. Car accident. Late one night. Very tragic, I'm afraid.
When?
5 years ago.
Could be a forgery.
It isn't. We checked the handwriting.
It's typed.
The signature. Why did he write all that down? Considering how dangerous it would be to his own life, if ever discovered.
I would have got there, eventually.
Dr. Holton disagreed with the prepared policy of enforcement of medicine. If it was so good, he is said to have argued, why the need to make it compulsory?
But it isn't. Well, not yet, anyway.
Oh, but it is. Well, for a certain group, anyway.
Which is?
We'll come to that. Proposed restrictions on travelling on public transport, international airports, even between one city to another. Those working with vulnerable groups standing for office. Even the whole idea of being employed full stop. Only to be told you might be reinfected afterwards. Hardly very reassuring.
All right, giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Thank you.
Then the question is, why? The pharmaceutical industry?
Our friends in medicine. Beneficiaries, of course, but hardly the reason we'd get out of bed. I'm sure they think they are worth every penny. But other than national prestige, who would care?
Their shareholders?
Good point.
Then why?
When people mention the establishment, do you know whom they mean?
The likes of you, Richard.
Yes. I do appear to be exactly what you would expect. The tweed jacket, shotgun over one arm, flat cap. Even the Wellingtons for when it rains. The complete outfit. Gun dog by my side.
Something like that.
Then you would be wrong. The establishment is anyone with a stake in the society in which we live.
In other words?
Those that own the roof over their own heads.
I think we used to call them the land-owning class.
But today, a whole generation was able to purchase the very plot of land on which they lived. They had the right. Now they have real value. Now they have property.
And those that rent.
Modern-day waged slaves never be anything till they can put their own roof over their own heads.
Thank you. That's me.
When people have something to lose, they rarely want to ask the questions that might lead them to losing the best assets that they have ever acquired. Subsequently, change will not be brought about by the political will of the electorate. In essence, the establishment.
You mean they will not wish to share the wealth they believe was generated by their inability.
You really are very quick on the uptake. But yes, even as the world alters around them, few will be prepared to vote for the change required to aid the younger generations who are slowly being priced out of the very country that had made their parents rich.
Therefore,
you face a future exodus. If the qualified youth leave, where will be the future of this island?
meaning change will have to be gently forced upon their grandparents.
Correct. How?
Global economic shutdown.
And why would that be in our interest?
People with money consume.
And consumption does what?
Produces carbon.
And the ice caps are melting and the water is rising. Here, let me refill your glass.
So, what you are saying, if I have you right, is that you and those like you produced a global pandemic to save the world.
Have you noticed how blue the sky became when the economy was closed? You can only predict the future by shaping it yourself. While the world's people were given story after story about our struggle against the disease, few of them even noticed as the global economy shrunk.
And the skies got clearer.
The peoples of this planet won't save it just because we ask them nicely, will they? You knew the truth of what was going on all the time, didn't you? You just didn't want to admit it to yourself. Easier to have the time off work, wasn't it?
You know, all that you've told me could be called a conspiracy theory.
And you wouldn't be the first, but that's the whole point, isn't it?
Oh.
To tell the truth, but in such a way that it is deniable. It is hard to hide the truth of anything. Eventually the truth will out. Well, it's what they say.
Then what do you do?
There is only one way to deal with unpleasant truths. You have to leak parts of the truth, so that, with time, the public comes to the reality long before it is confirmed officially. If people can come to the conclusions themselves, they will rarely claim to be shocked. They will simply shrug their shoulders and tell you, "It's what I thought all the time."
And the truth?
The truth?
Yes.
We are running out of the natural resources that keep this world going. Change is coming, whether we like it or not.
The establishment will deny every word of your letter is a fake.
Which will provide you with advertising you could not buy. Your name made, the magazine promoted, and one or two even possibly reading your article, telling their friends, going on social media, spreading the word, getting people to think for themselves. It is important, Adrian. I believe it is also moral.
You set me up.
From which you shall now benefit.
You wanted a journalist that had some credibility to be attached to the searcher. You wanted any conspiracy theory to sound plausible, to have the air of truth to it. And to do that, you just destroyed my career. So you can rebuild it to fulfill your agenda.
It's the way the world works, young man. I'd suggest you get used to it.
Is that what you think?
No one is promoted who does not in some way serve someone else. The only question is, do you individually profit from it or not? I am offering you an opportunity, which very few get these days.
It's not a choice if there is no way to say no.
I didn't say it was a choice. I said it was an opportunity.
An opportunity to lie.
I never said that this letter was a lie. In fact, I told you the complete opposite.
I've seen far too many conspiracy theories put before a film camera, a microphone, the pages of a book, discussed in the local pub, and nothing changed. Your idea, some might call it an idea, to educate the people out of acceptance is to achieve what? The average man and woman on the street might talk about one story or another, but they can't make anything happen, and with the other fluff desperate for the public's attention. What is one more conspiracy theory when there are simply so many? But then, that is the whole point, isn't it? Acceptance, the shrugging of the shoulders, the allowing of evil to be done and recognized as long as you don't bully me. We could see the shop units closing on the high street. We knew this was a land grab in all but name. You seem to think, Richard, that you have the monopoly on wisdom. You think you're being benevolent, telling the children the hard facts of life. Anyone that lives long enough comes to understand how the world works for real. The skill, Sir Richard, is not seeing behind the curtain. It is learning to live with the contradictions that we see every day, while pretending that we don't. You think you're being kind, allowing me to explain to the public that what they were told was not the full story. You don't seem to understand that we knew there was something else going on. And yes, the skies even got bluer, and we all got to spend the summer in the park, while you guys at the top of the pyramid got to apply a debt to this country not seen since the end of World War II. Did I miss anything?
Bravo! Congratulations! Hip, hip, and hooray! So, you have seen a bit further than most.
Then why?
Bother?
Yes.
In 2008, a research company across the pond ran some trials with young females between the ages of 17 to 27. Officially, it was for supplements of vitamins and minerals. Unofficially,
Yes?
the drug contains 3 chemicals called alzeazine, codium balyva, and esogene.
Quite a mouthful. What do they do?
They all have a proven history of creating ovarian failure.
How great was the decline in the birth rate within the test subjects?
15%.
Your future reduction in consumption rates?
2 years before the pandemic hit, a report was presented to the press in New York stating that global human population would fall during the middle to late 21st century. A number of reasons were given, of course, which almost always equate to the rise in female education and economic opportunity.
But the end had already been decided.
A connection to the presentation will be sent to every social media account across this planet. Your writing will be in the clicks below. Some people will watch and read. The idea will take hold. For a certain percentage of the population, you're going to be famous. So, do we have an agreement?
I'll think about it.
Excellent. You do that. Let me show you to the door.
Thank you.
I shall make 1 or 2 calls of my own in the morning, so don't be surprised if you get calls from larger publications trying to jump on the bandwagon. We need to make as much noise as we can.
Right.
I also have a few commercial interests in television, so again, expect some contact on that front. Radio and the internet sites shouldn't be that far behind. Play your options, and you won't need a financial collapse to get yourself a nice house.
With you hiding behind me?
It's what you're getting paid for.
The more people are educated, the more they see the world for what it is.
Isn't that what education is about?
No.
Then what is education about?
What it has always been about.
Which is?
That people learn their place. The more you show the world for what it is, the more people hide behind their curtains at night, with the front door bolted and the back door fitted with a security light. It is ignorance that makes people embrace change. The minute they realize what change will cost them, they fight to retain the status quo, with you at the top of the tree.
Very good. I knew you'd get there in the end. The more you open the public's eyes, the more they'll want to close them. It's not us that fears the truth, because we already knew it from the start. It's all those that in fear accepted it, and will argue against anyone that tries to expose it, or in this case, rolled up their sleeves.
And the letter?
Is genuine, as I said.
And if I refuse to be part of this, whatever it is?
Then this evening never happened. But I don't think you'll do that.
Because of my career?
At your age, do you really want to start afresh?
No.
And people always love a good conspiracy theory.
Especially if it is denied officially.
They are all officially denied. There wouldn't be conspiracy theories otherwise, would they?
You want me to establish a number of arguments that can be destroyed in the future. What is technically referred to as a straw man. No substance. They just blow away in the wind, using the allegation of conspiracy to hide the truth.
The nation-state, Adrian, has responsibilities to those that wish no more than to sleep comfortably at night. For those, there is the official view of any event. For those that dare to question, there are different levels of reality, and depending on how deep the individual delves, will depend on what they find. When you think you've found the truth of it, then you have. Here, let me open the door for you.
And if I decide to write about what you told me this evening?
Then, at your funeral, I'll send flowers.
I could just walk away?
If you could have afforded to walk away, I wouldn't have invited you here this evening, would I?
We can all walk away, Sir Richard, and if you educate enough of us, one or two might do exactly that.
Let's see just how far you decide. I don't think you'll walk that far before turning around and walking back.
That's why the vaccines were given to the old folk first?
It's how we do things. Begin at the end, work your way back to where you wanted to start.
In the conspiracy theory, Nigel Peaver was Sir Richard James, Tom Hume was Adrian Smith, Helen Farley was Professor Mary Collingwood, and Ben Morris was Professor Martin Dysart. Artwork for the play was by Sheila Jackson. Original music was composed and performed by Paul Whiting, and the play was written and directed by John Fryer. The Conspiracy Theory is an audio production for Political Art.
As always, another great radio play from John Fryer, The Conspiracy Theory, here at Art Radio Transmission, Art Radio on Demand from DPN. And don't forget, if you'd like to listen to any of the other interviews and radio plays and features, then don't forget to check out our YouTube podcast channel.